Hello everybody, welcome back to Storytime Saturday, your one-stop shop for adventure and fun. Today we are going to be reading through chapter 14 of my book, Adventures of the Crown, book 1, and we are going to find out what Ron meant when he said he wanted Lynette to be part of his army. With the knights distracted with clean-up duty and tending to the wounded, Lynette took this time to speak with Vaughan. "You hit your head," she said with a frown. "What?" Vaughan asked, raising an eyebrow at her. "I'm not hurt at all." "No, I mean, you've knocked your head so hard that you've lost any sense," Lynette said, her tone serious. Fenrin chimed in with a gentle, "Sarcasm goes over his head. You need to be a little blunter than that." He grinned a little, then continued to allow Arius to check his wounds over. Boy was no healer, but he at least knew the basics of healing herbs. Sighing heavily, Lynette nodded. "What I'm saying is that you've lost your mind, saying you want me to be in your army, like a knight. You're joking with me, right?" she said, folding her arms as she considered Vaughan critically. The man in question, however, merely stared at her with a serious expression before he finally responded with a simple, "I do not joke." Cutting in again, Fenrir said teasingly, "I don't think Vaughan knows the meaning of the word." An annoyed growl from Vaughan, coupled with a sharp look at Fenrir, made the king go quiet again. He turned his attention once more to Lynette and said, "I am serious. You are obviously skilled with that sword of yours, and you know your way around a battle. Besides, you saved the king's life. That means you deserve a reward at the very least. Usually said reward comes with knighthood or promotion." "But I'm not a noblewoman, Kalanamnabar. I'm not even human. You cannot want me as a knight. That is foolish," Lynette exclaimed. "Not that I don't think she would make a great knight, and one I certainly could trust enough. Part of me agrees with her. Remember what happened to what's-his-name? They will never accept her, even if we do." Fenrir once more added his thoughts, though he suddenly seemed serious now. Vaughan nodded his head to Fenrir. "I remember. They treated me the same way, and I was a noble's son," he said simply. "Then why do you think I would fare any better?" Lynette said, raising a brow. Her gaze was critical. Vaughan's lips thinned somewhat before he explained matter-of-factly, "The king has wanted more elves in his ranks, and you can clearly hold your own, unlike those within the city. Most never aspire to be more than guards, and even then there are very few who choose such a life." Her eye twitching, Lynette hissed, "I am not an elf. I'm an Aaron. Let me just get that out now. Secondly, do you honestly blame them?" Vaughan peered at Lynette for a moment before folding his arms and saying, "Aaron, my apologies, and for that, I do not blame them. But change cannot come from nothing. We need a strong person to clear the issues with the bigotry in the kingdom, even if no one wishes to admit it is there. And you think I can help with this? A moment ago you didn't even trust me much," Lynette said, narrowing her look at him. She couldn't get her mind around Vaughan at all. If the knight captain says he wants to recruit you, then he has decided to trust you, I think," Arius said, offering a small smile to Lynette. "I think," Vaughan began, glancing at the youth for a moment before looking back at the woman, "if anyone gave you trouble, you would have no issue knocking them back into place. This is something our city—" he paused for a moment. "What is it you call your city brethren?" he asked. "Maruthia," Lynette said simply. "Right, Maruthia," Vaughan said, nodding his head. "They lack the fighting spirit you have. Most prefer to avoid conflict with others in their profession. You want the king to make things better for your people? Then this is a good place to start. Eventually, it can be moved to your own people, but without someone to make that step, we can only do so much." "Oh, so you mean like an advocate for her people," Fenrir said, perking up as he listened to Vaughan's words carefully. "In a manner of speaking. Vaughan said with a short nod of his head. He shifted his attention to Fenrir as he continued to speak. You would have to make her more of a bodyguard than a normal knight, since I hope to keep her close to your side. This would also free up my time a bit more, to get even more important things done. Of course, it's all a moot point unless she agrees to it. Annette frowned deeply in thought. She had a lot to consider. On one hand, this would mean she would be stuck in human lands, with no friends or family to comfort her in tough times. On the other hand, she might be able to actively help her people. Maybe even be a voice for those who have lost their way, and submitted to their lives to human lands. She folded her arms and tapped her foot against the ground as she weighed in her options. You can say no, Fenrir said softly. I'd like to have you at my side, but we won't force it. You would also get paid and have rank none of your people has ever gained before, Vaughan added. Annette peered at the two seriously for a long moment before asking, and I assume you'll teach me how to blend in better? I have zero understanding of how human places work. The city is not the same as the light Mistwood, and more dangerous too if I'm not careful. I will personally see to your training as a knight, and the laws of the city. You need not worry about that, Vaughan said, with a nod. We have tutors for the etiquette of castle life. Lynette continued to consider his words. Choosing such a life was not easy for her. She hadn't planned to stay away from her people for so long, so the possibility of not seeing them for years was not an easy thought to take in. You have time to think it over, Vaughan said finally, and Lynette nodded slowly. This was not something to decide straight away after all. As Fenrir slowly stood up, one of the knights came over to the small group. She raised a fist to her chest in salute, then said, We have suffered only a few injuries, no casualties. We are ready to travel when you are, Your Majesty. Nodding to her, Fenrir replied with a firm, Then let us return home. Keep on guard, though. They may regroup and attempt another attack. Yes, sir, the woman said, then turning around once more to give the command to move onwards. The journey back was slow going, but thankfully uneventful. Whenever the bandits had gone, they did not show themselves again. The group was glad. They weren't sure they'd fare so well if they had been attacked again. The city itself was surrounded by large walls. Large gates led in and out from several directions. The one thing that Lynette could not help but notice, however, were the giant statues of wolves with amethyst-embedded eyes that stood guard over the inside of the gates. She wondered how many thieves tried to steal the gems from the statues. Each gate held towers in which several guards stood at various locations. Some stood at the top to look out for danger, while others managed the gates themselves. Lynette could not help but feel intimidated by it all, even if part of her was in awe. Ignoring the guards, there were people everywhere. She had never seen such large gatherings before, even among her own people. There was not even half of the population in this small section of the city. She wondered just how many were citizens, and how many were simple travellers passing through. One thing she was certain of, however. If the king's people had wanted to attack her people in force, assuming all of her people had gathered in one place, the human population would win 1,000 times over. As the knights made their way through the streets, people could not help but crowd them. It wasn't every day the king rode through, after all. Lynette could not help but notice that Fenrir suddenly seemed more refined than his usual self. He was even ignoring the obvious pain he had been in during the trip, in order to greet his citizens with a raised hand and a polite wave. Apparently, his commoners thought he was the best thing in the world. Their cheers were excited and loud. Vaughan seemed rather pleased with himself as he watched Fenrir out of the corner of his eye, though he soon trailed back as he allowed the knight with Fenrir hitching a ride to catch up. Please make sure the young man makes it home safely, he said quietly. The knight nodded his head in response. See you around, Lynette, Arius said, looking very happy to be back in the city. She offered him a smile in return and tilted her head towards him, returning his goodbye with a silent one of her own. She would miss the boy, but hoped she'd see him again. And that, my citizens, is the end of the chapter. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We are finally at the King's City, and who knows where the things will go from there. Will Lynette join and become a knight or a bodyguard? Or will she go home? I think the answer to that might be obvious, because otherwise it wouldn't be a fancy adventure story if the people just went home, right? But anyway, I will hopefully see you for the next one. Bye.